years ago, when I was 25, I found myself embarking on a new phase of my life. I had just committed to a lease for a modest house in the town where I had spent the past few years living in an apartment. This transition, however, presented its own set of challenges. The space within my new home felt barren, lacking the furnishings and decorative touches needed to make it feel welcoming. I had the basics covered with a decent-sized couch and a TV stand, but my television was a small one, better suited for a bedroom than a living room. Given my limited budget, I turned to Craigslist, hoping to find a more appropriately sized TV for my living room without breaking the bank. My search brought up several nice flat-screen TVs, but they were all beyond my financial reach and, frankly, more luxurious than I really needed. My main goal was to find a large, affordable TV to fill the space in my living room without any particular concern for the latest technology or the highest quality picture. After a thorough search, I stumbled upon a listing that seemed to perfectly match my requirements. It featured an older model flat-screen TV that was affordable, sizable, and purportedly in good working order. Despite being about a decade old and not what would be considered flat by today's standards due to its 3 to 4 inch thickness and considerable weight, it caught my attention. Eagerly, I reached out to the seller with an email and continued my search, though nothing else caught my eye. I harbored a quiet hope that this TV would be the solution to my living room dilemma. The next morning, I was greeted by a reply from the TV's owner, a man named Mitch. His response was unexpectedly enthusiastic, offering to arrange a viewing at my earliest convenience. His eagerness struck me as slightly odd, perhaps overly so, which left me feeling somewhat uneasy. Nonetheless, I reasoned that he might simply be a cheerful older individual, excited to make the sale. I told Mitch that I was available any day of the week after 6 p.m., following my work schedule. He quickly responded, suggesting that 6:30 p.m. the next day would be ideal for him. At the bottom of his email, he included his address and a Google Calendar invite for an event named Craigslist TV. Although I found it unusual for someone to use a calendar invite for a Craigslist transaction and wasn't entirely sure of its purpose, I accepted it. This detail seemed odd, but it didn't really concern me. Preparing for our meeting, I made sure my truck was empty to transport the TV. The following day, after my work, I drove directly to Mitch's address. By the time I arrived, it had already gotten dark. The house stood out, with all its lights brightly illuminating the interior, which I took as a reassuring sign of Mitch's readiness for my visit. Before approaching the door, I double-checked to ensure I had brought all the necessary cash for the purchase. Confirmed and ready, I stepped out of my truck and made my way to the front door, ready to finalize what I hoped would be a simple transaction. As I approached the house, I noticed the front door was ajar, with no screen door in sight, just the main entrance slightly open. Assuming it had been left that way for me, I cautiously leaned forward to peek inside. However, seeing no one, I decided to announce my presence by ringing the doorbell. The sound of the bell was almost immediately followed by a noise from within, like something dropping at the far end of the house, and then silence enveloped the space. This sudden quiet, punctuated by the unexplained noise, sparked a wave of nervousness in me. I was on the verge of turning back, driven by the unsettling feeling, when I heard footsteps approaching from behind the door. It creaked open further, revealing a man who partially hid behind it, asking if I needed something. With a slight hesitation, I explained, yeah, I was here to look at your TV. We scheduled for 6:30 today. He scrutinized me briefly before responding with a simple, "All right," and then fully opened the door to let me in. It was in that moment, stepping across the threshold, that my apprehension deepened. The man's demeanor was starkly different from what I had anticipated based on our email exchange. Instead of the cheerful elderly man I was expecting, I was greeted by someone who was neither welcoming nor seemingly happy to see me. A large, grumpy-looking middle-aged individual. Despite the internal alarms now screaming in my head, I found myself already inside, committed to a situation that felt increasingly off. The TV was positioned in the room immediately adjacent to the entrance, and the man paused there, watching as I examined it. Feeling a mix of eagerness to end the encounter and uncertainty about the appliance's condition, I hastily affirmed, yeah, this looks good. I'll take it." My statement came despite not having tested the TV to verify its functionality. My primary goal was to conclude the transaction swiftly. Extending the cash towards him, I awaited his response. He gave the money a brief inspection, then shifted his gaze back to me, an action that felt loaded with unspoken tension. With a swift motion, he accepted the money, promptly pocketing it. Then, without a moment's delay or a word of explanation, he firmly grasped my shoulder and pushed me back towards the entrance, his voice raised, commanding me to leave. Caught off guard by his abrupt hostility, I offered no resistance. Instead, I hurried back to my truck, propelled by a sudden urge to escape the unsettling situation. Once inside my vehicle, I wasted no time speeding away from the house, driven by a mix of confusion and relief to be departing from what had quickly turned into a distressing and bizarre exchange. Shortly after the unsettling encounter, I found a safe spot to pull over and immediately contacted the police to report the robbery. Throughout the ordeal, I couldn't help but marvel at the foolishness of the perpetrator for conducting such an act at his own residence, thereby exposing his location to me. However, the subsequent call from the police plunged me into a state of utter disbelief as they unfolded the details of what had actually transpired at the house. As the week progressed, the true narrative began to emerge, clarifying the initially murky circumstances. Contrary to my assumption, the individual I had encountered was not Mitch, the man who had listed the TV on Craigslist. In a shocking twist, the actual homeowner, Mitch, was discovered in an unconscious state within his kitchen, bearing significant injuries but, fortunately, still alive. It was revealed that the man who had greeted me at the door was in fact another Craigslist respondent, who had arrived with the intention of purchasing some kitchenware Mitch had also advertised. This individual had assaulted and robbed Mitch in a violent confrontation that occurred mere moments before my arrival. Adding to the surreal nature of the situation, it emerged that Mitch had also sent a Google Calendar invite to the perpetrator, the same one he had sent to me. Unbeknownst to the criminal, this invite revealed his email address, which conveniently comprised his first and last name. This crucial oversight facilitated his swift identification and subsequent apprehension by law enforcement, leading to his capture within a matter of days. In the aftermath of the ordeal, I had the opportunity to meet Mitch in person. Despite the traumatic events he had endured, he remained remarkably upbeat and resilient, embodying the demeanor of a genuinely content and positive individual. His ability to maintain a positive outlook in the face of adversity left a lasting impression on me, serving as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit challenging circumstances.